I am so fucking excited for this episode. This is my first time having an all male podcast panel on my show, and not just male, but all Latinos. Okay. So I just want to say before we get started, Cain, David, and Jorge, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, for sure. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And a little backstory for my audience. We all connected on Twitter Spaces. And if you're not on Twitter and if you're not in those Twitter Spaces, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. But we have been having some amazing conversations in the mental health space. That's how we all connected. And a couple weeks ago, we had one after the story of Twitch, who unfortunately passed away due to suicide, allegedly. We don't know yet. But we had such an amazing conversation that night, and it really just sparked the fire inside of me to continue having this conversation. So this episode is titled, Let's Start the Conversation Around Men's Mental Health. And I really want to emphasize the last three words, men's mental health. There's such a huge stigma when it comes to mental health in general, and even more so in the male community and the Latino or people of color community. So I really want to have this conversation and just break down the stigma that comes with mental health and being a man and being a man of color. We're going to get into it, but before we get started, I have each guest that comes on the show to briefly introduce themselves to my audience when they're meeting you for the first time. So I'm going to go with Cain, then David, then Jorge. Please, in your own words, introduce yourself to my audience. Who are you?
Hey, what's up, audience? My name is Cain en español. I am Latino. I'm 40 years old. I've been born and raised here in LA my whole life. My parents immigrated for that dream, for that better life, and that's the dream they gave to us. I'm one of four brothers, so my mom just had pure men. So now I'm here being an advocate for mental health and Twitter spaces and all that good stuff. Yeah, from that, my parents really have a really strong foundation on me and everything I pursue. So that's just a little brief of Cain Sanchez.
Wow, four boys. I feel bad for your mom. That must have been a lot of like
There were some
testosterone
girls.
energy. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we all give him some girls, so she's good on that part.
There you go, full circle. All right, David, please introduce yourself to my audience.
Hey guys, my name is David del Campo, a mental health advocate as well, co-founder of Underdog Brand, which is a brand that's going to bring more awareness to mental health. It's a group of us that's starting it out. Just like Cain, I am Latino. My family's born and raised in Mexico, right? Immigrated to California, to the States. So we are a family of 9. We grew up in Los Angeles. I know more or less how the lifestyle of a household could be in a Latino community, right? So that's a little gist of David del Campo.
I could just only imagine how chaotic that household must have been growing up. So shout out to your mom for holding it down. All right, Jorge, please introduce yourself to my audience.
My name is Jorge Perez. I was born in Mexico City. I lived in Mexico City for 14 years. I moved here when I was actually about to turn 15. And the reason I moved here is because, like in Mexico, there were 2 attempts of kidnapping me and my father. So we suddenly had to switch our entire life in a matter of a week. So I graduated elementary school on Friday and I started high school on a Monday. It was crazy.
You want to talk about trauma?
Yes. So I couldn't think about my family. Everything turned out perfectly fine, thankfully. Now I have been here in the States for over half of my life. Wow, that's crazy to even say it, right? I guess this is a way to describe myself. I am an entrepreneur. I have a marketing agency. I also have a clothing line. And right now I started something called Latinos on Chain Media, which is a company that what we want basically is to make sure that Latinos are in the epicenter of Web3 and all decision making it happening. And I do that along a good friend of mine called Giovanni. So that's what we're doing right now. It's a little bit about me.
I love that. I love that you are creating your own seat at the table, that we don't see a lot of us in those spaces. The whole Web3 thing is so foreign to me, but I know that it's up and coming. And just to see men of color and women of color in those spaces, I think that's so beautiful. So shout out to you and your wifey for doing the damn thing. I wish you the most success with your business endeavors, all three of you. So thank you so much for introducing yourself. So I know, Cain, you talked about it a little bit, but every single guest that comes on my podcast, I always have them share as much or as little as you're comfortable with talking about when it comes to how you were as a kid, what life was like for you growing up. And I really want to focus around the mental health aspect. Was that a topic of conversation for you growing up?
Mental health was never brought up in our family. If anything, I remember my tío telling me whenever I would get hurt or cry, or my dad got the belt and smacked us for whatever bad thing we did, he would tell us like, "Los niños no lloran." So just like, hey, young boys don't cry, right? Looking back, it wasn't anything bad, but it was him just wanting to toughen me up and like, hey man, boys don't cry. But we never talked about mental health growing up. I was a kid full of emotion, a lot of anger just because I didn't know how to express myself to my parents. They would scold me for something and I would try to communicate with them on why they shouldn't be scolding me or why I did such a thing, whatever it is that I did. And they just weren't having it, right? They weren't having it. So I would get angry. I'm like, you're not understanding me. And my mom just told me a couple of stories that I would run a lot. I would be a little conteston. I was a conteston kid growing up, meaning like I was constantly telling my parents, just talking back to them, whether it be in front of guests or privately at home. I didn't care. I needed to get my point across. They would tell me something and I would just talk back and then run because I knew that something was coming, right? Like the chancla or the cinto. So I would just run and I knew they weren't going to catch me. I had speed. I was a kid. I would run and then I knew that after a few hours or something, I would just come back and they would be chill and wouldn't be as bad as if it would have been right there in the moment. So yeah, looking back, I was a kid full of emotion and anger and a bunch of emotions that I didn't know how to control, which as we get into this kind of brings the passion. And now that I have kids, I see that in them, something that I would have done as a kid. And I use that as leverage. I use that as an example. I'm like, hey, I know what you're going through. Right? Your 3-year-old brain is saying something that an adult definitely knows way more than you. But from your point of view, I get it. And so I try to use that as leverage. Oddly enough, my kids gave me a lot of patience. I didn't know I had so much patience being able to explain to them. But I guess it comes with the passion of mental health and knowing how to control yourself, your emotions. But yeah, that was me as a little kid. I was a travieso.
I'm sure a lot of people listening can definitely relate. I was definitely the same way. My sister was the same way. My sister more so than me. I was kind of like the follower. I always wanted to do what she did in her shadows, but she was always the one to speak up. As a kid, you really don't know, but I think that's beautiful to have that as a kid growing up because that definitely manifests into your adult life and you're able to use your voice and speak up. So I can definitely relate. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I'm going to go to Jorge now. Talk about what life was like for you growing up. Was mental health a conversation?
It was definitely not. I didn't know what mental health was until I moved to the United States. And when I was late in my university career, that's when I started to hear about mental health. Before that, I had no idea it was a thing. I had no idea that you also have to take care of your mind, the way you see the world. First and foremost, my parents divorced when I was 2 years old. Basically, I'm only child, by the way. I was the kid of two best friends. So thankfully, they decided to co-parent and have a great relationship. I will always see them together. My father will always go over like on the weekends. Sometimes he will spend the night there or he will be at every single party or get together, right? So on that aspect, I am really thankful. But to be honest, and maybe it's because of trauma, right? Because it's something that I need to talk about with somebody, I guess. But I don't remember much of my childhood. From the moment I moved here to the States, I remember everything that happened here in the States, but I don't remember much of the things that happened in Mexico. And sometimes I have flashes of my life. Oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, I remember that. But to be honest, I believe because I moved here to the United States and I didn't know how to speak English and it was such a sudden change. I was in survival mode the whole time. And then on top of that, because we moved here, my mom had to work 72 hours per week. It was just me and my mom that moved here, right? So I will only see her for 1 hour every day. So I pretty much had to raise myself all through high school as well. I remember all of that, but I don't remember my childhood in Mexico. So thankfully, I had so much time in my hand and I was always like a nerd kid. Like I was always into computers. So what I used to do after high school, I would go to the library and then I was in chat rooms. I was watching YouTube videos when it came out in 2006. And then thankfully, I came across a podcast from a guy named Kevin Rose and Alex. Basically, they were talking about entrepreneurs, people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, before they were even famous, before they were a thing. And that gave me like an anchor, a role model of people, of the type of men that I could have become, right? Because I didn't have that. My dad, he wasn't here. It was just me and my mom. And I had a lot of energy. I was trying to figure out things in life. And thankfully, those videos came across my path and then I just attached to it. So I decided I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my own business. I didn't know that was a possibility for me. I knew I was going to be able to work for a business, but I didn't know I was going to be able to own a business. So that's kind of what my childhood was, more like survival mode.
When I'm on a guest on other podcasts and some people ask me that question, like, talk about what life was like for you growing up. I don't remember unless I'm watching home videos. Because one thing about my dad growing up, he recorded our entire fucking life. He just had the camera and he would just record everything. Like before the Kardashians did that shit, we fucking did that, right? But I don't know why. And I definitely know I need to work through that with therapy and a professional. But there's just so many gaps in my childhood that I cannot remember. And honestly, the only things that I really do remember are the bad things, the things that made me feel like shit. And I only remember the good things when I see them on video. So thank you for sharing that, because sometimes I feel like I'm the only one. I don't want to take away from my parents. I had a great upbringing. My parents are together 40 something years, a stable home, but just for some reason, I can't fucking remember my childhood. I don't know why. So it's good to know I'm not the only one. All right, David, you're up next. What was life like for you growing up?
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing. Thank you, Jorge, Kane, and Leon. Your personality is on point.
Thank you.
Most definitely. So, as I mentioned, I come from a family of nine. As you could already notice, I was actually just born into a family that was out of control. Born and raised in pretty much poverty, right? Nine of us. I remember a lot of the bad things, like you were mentioning too. It was just like one of those things happening, but I wouldn't be able to get an answer. And mental health wasn't a topic growing up as well. Anything related to personal development wasn't a topic. It was a lot of more arguments, more fights, drugs, right? Gangs, being around, surrounded by gangs. I do remember my family and my parents, I love them. They always provided. There was never a time where we went hungry. My sister said that my dad's a baker. He would always have bread on the table for us. And that's her, like, there's her quote. So I'm grateful for my parents 100%. However, my parents, my dad, he didn't have a dad. He didn't know how to be able to raise us as a parent as well. And I'm grateful for what he did. He's strong, super grateful for him. If anything, now it's the other way around. Instead of him coaching me, I'm coaching him on the personal development.
Shout out to you for that, because that shit ain't easy. I talk about that all the time on my podcast. Breaking those generational trauma cycles, us really, the millennials, we're in our 30s and 40s, we are breaking and shifting that narrative, and it's fucking hard. So give yourself your flowers for being the one to change the narrative, because it's fucking difficult. It's not easy.
It's not. It's a challenge. And we had a lot of hardships in our families growing up too. Not especially, but just living in the projects already alone. By 16, I'm just be open up and be vulnerable. By 16, I was already shot my first time. By 18, I was already shot the second time. So I was around and affiliated. And well, my friends consumed it as I was a target, right? But that was actually implemented, and I believed that. But in any case, you could already imagine the type of trauma that I was in and I was able to grasp at such a young age. And growing up from a family of nine, the trauma, the violence that was already taking place, and then dealing with that. However, there are some good parts of my life. I graduated high school a year early and go to ELAC, graduate ELAC, transfer to Cal State LA University. Within that time also, I was going to graduate, going to jail. I took full responsibility of it. At the time, I didn't know how to take responsibility for it, right? When I came out, I finished my degree, my bachelor's in operations and supply chain. So despite the challenges, despite everything, despite the trauma, I was still able to accomplish something in my life. However, I still felt at that time I was held back because I graduated a year early from my class, and I always felt like I was behind. When I felt like that, that's when I started searching for therapy, doing things like that. That's when I started realizing and focusing more on my personal development to be able to better myself. So I thank God that I did, right? And that's a little bit of a story of my childhood and how I grew up and the traumas and related to it.
Thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy talking about those dark moments, but like I said in the Twitter space when we were all together, there is a message in the mess. You don't see it when you're in the trenches and you're in the turmoil, but once you're on that other side and you have that moment of clarity, you're like, you know what, God? Now I understand. Now I get it. For me, in my situation, leaving an abusive relationship, well, really escaping an abusive relationship, when I hit that rock bottom, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? But now being on this personal development journey and working on my mental health and having these open conversations, now hindsight is always 2020. It's like, okay, you know what? Now I fucking get it. So that's why I really love having guests like the three of you come on and just talk about the hard shit, because so many of us go through it, but we always feel like we're the only ones going through it. And it's not until we have these type of conversations that we can normalize it. So I just want to say thank the three of you for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing just a little bit, because I know there's so much more we can go into, but I got to keep it on a time limit. So thank you. So now I want to talk about men's mental health. That's the topic of this conversation. And I want to share some statistics that I came across with my audience. And I would just want to get some input from you guys. I think this was from either 2020 or 2021. And it's fucking shocking, okay? 77% of men polled have suffered from common mental health symptoms like anxiety, stress, and depression. I've been clinically diagnosed with anxiety and depression and PTSD, so it's way more common than we think, but even more so for men. 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health. 29% of those who haven't done so say they are too embarrassed to speak up about it, while 20% say there is a negative stigma on the issue. The biggest cause of mental health issues in men is work, finances, and their health. And the final key finding, 40% of men polled said that it would take thoughts of suicide or something super dramatic in order for them to really seek out professional mental health. So I want to know, what do you guys think about those numbers, about all of those key findings? Can you guys relate? Whoever wants to go first, just go ahead and jump in.
They make sense. And honestly, I'm not surprised. We talking about this in the space, right? It's sad, the fact that we all have been conditioned to really believe that we are different. Yes, there are differences between men and women, right? They're biological. That's great. But the most dangerous ones happen through culture, through society. Again, right? I'm from Mexico. So in Mexico, the whole mental health thing is not a thing at all. I know people who have the symptoms of it. I know people who are depressed. I know people who are mad all the time, who are at edge all the time, people who are really toxic, but for whatever reason, right? But we never talk about why those things happen. Why is it happening? Now, when it comes to men, the role of women in society has evolved and it's palpable. We can see it. But for men, that's not the case. For men, most people believe that yes, your role is to provide. Well, what about now that women say that they can provide for themselves? Now what? Or what about women have to constantly fight for our manhood card, basically, all the time? We always have to prove ourselves one way or another. We also get scared. We also get sad. But because we don't know how to identify those feelings, we are angry all the time because that's the one feeling that we know how to identify. Feelings are energy, right? And when we don't channel them the way that we're supposed to, they go towards the one thing that they know that is more familiar for us. For the majority of men, that's anger. When I was hearing Cain and Dave talk about a little angry, that was me as well. I was angry all the time. Whenever I am stressed, whenever I am sad, anxious, because I don't know what's going to happen, I'm angry. And if I don't take a moment and realize, okay, why am I angry? I have no reasons to be angry, but I do have reasons to be stressed. I do have reasons to be sad. I have many other feelings that I could like analyze or try to process, but I don't do it. Everything goes straight towards anger. And understand one thing, no one speaks about this enough. Every man lives a different reality. I am a single, well, I'm not single, I have a relationship, but I'm not married and I'm 32 years old. What I'm going through, my experience, is not only based on my life, my trauma or whatnot, but it's also around those facts. So the experience that Cain is living as a father, as someone who people look after him as a provider, protector, it's completely different than my experience. So that brings different levels of stress on its own. We never talk about it. And that's the dangerous part.
For sure. Thank you for bringing that last part up. And Cain, I want you to kind of be like the resident speaker for the fathers out there. Talk a little bit about those statistics and the pressure of being a dad and showing up and being there for your kids, how that takes a toll on your own mental health.
I mean, Jorge nailed it. And the anger is the number one emotion that everyone knows how to, that's the avenue everyone travels to. And as a dad, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I realize the patience that I've had and it goes to my favor just because I understand when my little baby was crying, right? We get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So me and my wife would have a little routine, like you get one day, I get the next day, right? What's the point of both of us waking up at the same time and getting the baby? So we had a routine. So then I'm getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I have the baby. I would have to tell myself a story to understand like why the baby is crying. We fed it, we changed the diapers. What I would tell myself, and what was pretty funny, is that my baby had some resilience. My baby wanted something and she's not giving up. And the only way she can communicate is by crying. And you know what? Kudos to you. You want something. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is, but you're not going to stop until you get it. And I love that about you. But unfortunately, crying is the only way you can express yourself. So that's the only way I'm like, okay, anger is immediate. The first reaction, especially waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to put the baby down to sleep. So I had to see him like, you're a fighter. And I love that about you. And I'm going to let you do your cry because I've done my check marks of your feeding, diapers, wrapped you up like a little burrito. That's all I can do for now. But I could definitely see my dad was very impatient. His reaction was anger. With anger comes knocking stuff down, breaking stuff. And I saw myself going in that direction as a young man. With my now wife, I saw myself doing little petty fights, little things that just didn't have. And I'm embarrassed even to tell you some stories of what caused me to either do some stupid things or say some stupid things. And looking back, I'm like, you stood by me through thick and thin. You are the world to me. The fact that we were together as young since high school, 16. So I matured in front of her eyes. We saw each other grow. And in that were the tough times, were me exploring and knowing myself and seeing my ups and downs. But as a father, like I said, that patience and that understanding and maybe that little storytelling to yourself gets you in a different state of mind. So that's one thing I would love to throw out there for all the parents.
No, absolutely. I love that. One thing that's really helped me in my own healing journey is changing the way that I speak to myself. And I'll definitely be the first, well, not the first, because you guys can relate too, but anger, that's the first emotion for me too. When I'm feeling frustrated, like I want to yell and scream. And that's something that was common growing up in my household, right? So for you to have that self awareness to be able to recognize that it's happening and then be like, okay, we're not going to continue this generational trauma. Shout out to you for doing that. And I think that's really important to reiterate that for the parents out there, because being a parent is fucking hard.
Just real quick, if you notice, I don't know, just by hearing Cain, and I was like, same. Sometimes I have fights with my girlfriend over the dumbest shit ever. And then 5 minutes after I lash out or whatever, I'm like, what are you doing, dude? What the fuck? It wasn't even that deep. But if you notice that just that little action of your first instinct is going towards anger, that extrapolates a wave among everything else, right? My dad was not like that, thankfully. I used to see my grandfather, my mom's dad, he will always gravitate towards aggression, right? And I will see how that will also affect the dynamic between him and my grandmother, and then the relationship between my grandmother and my mom and all her siblings. Little actions like that literally set the tone for everything else that happens in the relationship of a family dynamic. That's why it's important that we talk about these topics, because if women are not aware of these little things, sometimes we are the ones that instigating these type of behaviors among our families, and then we learn through mimicking the behavior of other people. As men, we mimic the behavior of other men around us, so we're repeating the same patterns, right? That's why, like, when I hear David talk about how he's breaking that pattern, that's so dope, because like he's switching everything for his family and the next generations. That's why these conversations are so important, because of that. He's a clear example of that.
Yes, the three of you are. So I'm giving all of y'all flowers for coming on here and having this real ass conversation that needs to be had. And I hope whoever is listening, you're really taking it in. And I love that we're able to get a perspective from a different gender. Obviously, I'm a woman, you guys are men. And just to hear men having these type of conversations, it's so fucking powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. David, I want to ask you, so why do you think there's such a stigma around mental health for men, and especially Latino men?
It all correlates, it all connects, right? From as how we were raised. I was raised as a timid kid. I didn't want nobody. My uncle invited me to go work. I didn't want to go work with him. I was reserved. I wanted to play because I was traumatized, but I didn't know it. But growing up, we started understanding that we can't really express our feelings to our friends, to our homies, however the case may be, right? Or even call somebody, hey, I got something against this person. I got something against that person. I can't forgive him. How do I do this? How do I do that? Right? So it starts from the root, from when we were kids and how we were brought up and just the people that were around. I shared this story on the Twitter spaces. I collect signatures for initiatives to be put on the state ballot. And I was outside of Target actually. And this gentleman, he walks out. I had my shirt on, Underdog Mentality, with the mental health in the back. He's like, hey, why are you wearing the mental health matters shirt? And I was like, what? Like towards the end, after he's coming back out, I was like, what does that mean to you? I was like, well, I'm actually just representing myself and my family and those that are also dealing with issues, right, that are going through mental health. He's like, nah, just man up. Aren't you Mexican? Like, he really started talking down on that stigma, right? On that. I was like, look, I'm standing for the people that are going through that. God bless you. Have a great day. But things like that, this is an example of how the Latino communities are thinking. And not everybody, of course, right? But
the majority thinks that way.
It's what Jorge was saying, is to be able to change that within our community. And this right here, we're changing that. It's something special that's happening right now between us, 100%, you guys.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I love it. You guys are fucking awesome. I just want to give you all the biggest hug. Like, it's just amazing. I'm so happy to be having this conversation. Now we're going to get personal, but again, you only share as much or as little as you're comfortable with talking about. And whoever wants to go first can volunteer. But I would love for each of you to share a moment of time in your life, whether it was childhood, adolescent, adulthood, where you were really struggling with your mental health and how you were able to overcome that challenge. Who's the brave one?
I'll go first. And this was probably one of my kickstarters for my passion towards mental health. And this was recently within the last 5 years. So I was driving home and I realized that I started getting some chest pains as I was driving. And I didn't know what that was. I thought maybe it was like inhaled improperly, the air valve, something. What the heck was that? And I just kept driving, didn't think much of it. And then I noticed it the next day as I was driving home again. 2 times, right? What's going on? So I started paying attention, like, why am I getting these chest pains as I'm driving home? What's going on? A little backstory. I have a neighbor. We weren't seeing eye to eye. This guy was just a very negative energy. Countless scenarios that I have in my check mark. This friendship should have ended a long time ago. I'm thankful now, but because I know that my nice personality was being taken advantage and I was giving that power to this person just because I didn't either once man up and step up or whatever it was. But number two is I didn't understand my own body. I didn't understand the power of no, which is funny because we've had countless interactions where I should have ended that friendship many times, but he always had a way to come back into the conversation. We're neighbors, right? So I'm either outside with my girls and he has a girl, his daughter, and then boom, they're talking, the daughters are talking, and then he's there with me, and then, what's up, man? What's up? Back in again, even though I didn't want it, back in again. And there's countless times where that happened. So my body knew at this point, we were again, me and the neighbor weren't talking. And for me, that was bliss. I wanted to end the conversation. We just had a falling out. I'm like, perfect. So my body knew that if this guy came back to me and talked to me again, knowing my personality, knowing who I was, my brain knew me better than I knew myself. My body didn't want anything to do with that, but the only way it could talk to me was by giving me anxiety, right? That was my first sign of anxiety ever. I never knew what that was. I never suffered from anxiety before, which is why I was like, what is this? What's going on with my chest? This is so weird. Now I know why I'm getting this tightness of my chest every time I'm driving home. It's because I want to avoid him. And knowing that if I let him back into, if he would somehow come back and say what's up or somehow introduce himself, just like the many other times that he did, nice Cain would let him back in again. As soon as I realized that, and I don't know why I was walking around with blinders in my eyes and I didn't know that I obviously had the power to say no, this friendship. Once I realized that, it was this 100-pound elephant was just lifted off my chest. And I was like, I have the power when he tries to come back again. Now I'm prepared to like combat it by whichever means necessary. Once I started preparing myself, like, okay, cool. He's going to do it. And when he does, this is how you're going to get out of it. This is what you're going to say. This is what you're going to do. This is what's going to happen. And once that took place, it was just the moment of I felt liberated. And sure enough, it happened. A couple months went by. There was a scenario where he came in like hard. I don't want to go into the details of how he kind of came in, but he did. And I shut it down, came into the house. And as soon as I closed the door, I was like, hallelujah. I was like, I just felt so powerful. I'm like, bro, I had this power this whole time. My body was telling me there's something that you don't like and you're not taking control of it. I know that for me, finding that story, for me sharing that story, I know that there is a root to everybody's anxiety. There is a root cause on why you're feeling a certain way. And unless you confront it, that's going to open up your door to liberation. And for me, I mean, that's my story.
Ooh, he is preaching. I'm so glad you shared that. It is so fucking important to set boundaries. And that's probably one of the hardest things for anyone, whether you're a man or a woman or trans, whoever you are, setting fucking boundaries, saying no, and no being a sentence and that's it. Not no, but no, and like no, period. So shout out to you for taking your fucking power back by setting those boundaries. I hope whoever is listening to that story can feel liberated and be like, you know what? I'm going to fucking say no. I'm going to take my power back. If I don't want to deal with your dirty ass, I don't need to. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Who wants to go next?
Okay, perfect. So I guess it's my turn. See, my fight, I guess, that led me into mental health was my fight against my own ego. So whenever I moved here to the United States, I realized that the only thing that kept me afloat and out of trouble was my ego. I didn't want my mom to see that I was going through it, basically, because I was raising myself, right? I was 14 in a completely different country, completely different culture. Even the people who spoke Spanish, they spoke different Spanish than mine. So I even had to learn how to relearn my own language. It was such a culture shock. There was this one time where maybe the third year of me opening my marketing agency. And again, no one taught me how to run a business. No one taught me about personal personal finances, let alone about corporate finances. So I was literally just doing payments, paying payroll, whatever, out of my ass. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to balance a payroll sheet, nothing like that. So I reached a point where it was either I continued with my lifestyle or I pay the people that are working for me. Obviously, that was money that belonged to them. That was not my money. I was in that position because of myself, because of my ignorance. I didn't reach out to the right people. I wasn't studying. I wasn't learning. So I decided to put all my stuff, every single little thing I had, into a storage unit. And then I was sleeping in my car outside Walmart in the middle of the summer in Texas, over 100 degrees, super hot. So I had to do that for like 2-3 weeks, right? Until more money started coming into the company. So I remember I was sleeping outside Walmart, and I will wake up, go to the gym, shower there, and then I will go visit my mom. Hey, mom, how you doing? Just to eat breakfast, because I didn't have money for food either. So it was like that for a week straight. And I realized that I had people around me that could have helped me, even the people that were working for me. If I would have opened up to them and tell them, hey, this is what's happening, they would have understood. We could have worked out some type of deal, whatever, but I didn't. And that was all because of my ego. And I was like shaking in the middle of the night. I was throwing up. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink water. I was stressed out of my mind. I was crying in my car. I was like, wait, I'm supposed to have this figured out. I'm the first one in my family with a business. I had this amount of money a couple months ago. Where did it go? And then that's when I started to realize I need to talk to people. I had to start getting out of my own way. And that was my ego. I realized that my ego was stealing so many experiences away from me. It's stealing my ability to connect with people. It was stealing my ability to even go into a place. Because I remember I was having this conversation with a friend. He asked me if I have been to New York before. And I said, yes, of course I have been there many times. I have never been to New York before in my life. But my ego made me say yes. And then there was this one time where we went over and I had to act like I have been there before. So I didn't even have a chance to look around, be in the moments of awe, because I was in that one iconic place. Then that's whenever I started realizing, okay, some things are not right. I understand that ego plays a huge part in our survival, the way we are supposed to navigate through life, but it also can be the chain that ties me down. So I had to like start working on that relationship with my ego, realizing that my ego is part of who I am, but it's not who I am. So that's key, right?
Yo, that was a whole bar. Like, I want to drop my mic because honestly, I really appreciate you for sharing that. And I think a lot of people can relate. Getting out of your own fucking way is probably one of the most life-changing things. For me personally, taking accountability, like that was my word of the year for 2022. And looking in the mirror and being like, bitch, you're the fucking reason why your life is the way that it is right now. So if you want it to change, you need to, one, look in the mirror and be like, okay, it's because of me and not everyone else, which is what I would do for the first 30 something years of my life. Victim and, oh, woe is me and everyone is the problem, but I'm perfect. No, looking in the fucking mirror and checking your ego, like you said. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's why I love this conversation, because I know so many people can relate to it.
And many men deal with this as well, right? And that's the problem, because ego, it's a huge part of being of the whole macho culture. Why is another guy looking at you or staring at you for more than 5 seconds? You automatically want to be like, okay, wait, what's your problem? Why are you looking at me? Maybe the guy thinks you're attractive. Who knows, right? Or he's like not even looking at you. He's looking at the person behind you. But so many things like that. And I think that's important. That was a huge, huge moment for me when I realized, okay, wait, a lot of the thoughts that are in my head that allow me to survive, that allow me to push forward, that allow me to stay out of trouble, those are ideas that serve me at some point, but they're not serving me right now. Like you said, I have to assume responsibility. I didn't know how to balance my finances. Now that has to change. I had to start learning about it. Before that, I didn't like to read at all. And then from that moment forward, I love to consume books if I can, listen to podcasts, try to learn anything, any way I can. There's this quote that I love: the limits of my world are the limits of my language. Something like that. The more you educate yourself, you get more consciousness, and then you are able to experience life differently. That was the moment that led me to this path. And I still struggle with it because it's a habit. Now you have to get rid of a habit that you had for years, most of my life. So it's always a constant fight. But now I'm able to see my ego. And now I know when something it's like bothering me, I'm like, okay, why is this bothering me? An attack towards me, or just my ego that feels a little bruised for whatever reason?
That self-awareness is very, very powerful. And I'm glad you said that last part, that you still struggle with it, because it might sound great today, but 2 weeks from now, you might have another fucking moment of challenge. And for you to be able to be self-aware and navigate through those negative feelings and those negative moments that come up, shout out to you for that. All right, David, it's your turn.
Cain and Jorge are dropping it right now. Those are the type of stories that people are going to listen to and then get something from it to be able to apply into their lives as well too. So I'm gonna start in 2018. I got diagnosed with PTSD, but I didn't take any medications. I did it. I just held firm. I took therapy, And then in 2021, right, I started following God, looking for a higher power in me. Like I wanted to know who David was. However, I stopped really developing myself in 2021. I think I was working 12, 13, 14-hour days, and it was just nonstop. And I'm grateful for the experience that I learned in real estate. Don't get me wrong. However, it got to a point where I didn't know about peace. I had a conversation with my business partner. I'm like, hey, you know what? Right now, I'm deciding I'm not going to do real estate. I'm choosing not to do real estate, and I really don't want to do it right now. I think I need to understand David. And when I did that, I took this personal development course that helped me understand what I really wanted. And it came to find out what I really wanted was peace. I was suffering not knowing that I was suffering, but because I was living in my past traumas. And I remembered working on real estate, I would think about my past traumas a lot. And then fast forward, I met Cain. It's such a blessing that I met Cain. Honestly, we vibed, we connected. I remember he took authority in that speech that he did when he was educating everybody on the crypto. His brand is Latino verse. And he was like, hey, what's up, guys? And he's like, hey, we connected. Pretty much mentored me. I felt like he was mentoring me. Like, hey, he asked me about the brand Underdog and what it meant to me. And I was sharing with him, right? We were able to connect. He told me, hey, download Twitter tonight, send me a text, and jump on tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about anxiety. And that's what we did. I downloaded Twitter. I texted him at night. I was like, hey, bro, this is going on. I jumped on Twitter the next day and we were able to talk. However, in the Twitter spaces is where the breakthrough actually happened. A good friend of ours, Tuco, he actually jumped in and he shared from the heart. He's like, hey, remember to go back to your inner child. Remember, I'm still in search of this peace. I'm so desperate for it. And when he came into that Twitter space, I remember him saying something about love and caring and giving your inner child some shoes. And I remember breaking down in that Twitter space. Damn, I didn't get a lot of love and a lot of care growing up. And I remember started doing these healing sessions within myself. I started telling myself and being like, hey, it's okay. You don't need to live traumatized. You don't need to live in fear no more. You don't even live in worry no more. Right. And little by little, I was just chiming it away. And until I finally felt the peace in my life, I was like, this is what it is. And I'm so grateful for the amount of peace that I have right now. And even my inner child, now he can live in peace. For the Twitter space, I'm grateful I came across Cain. For people like Jorge también to be able to share their wisdom and their experience with everybody. Like Tuco. Thank God for Tuco. But yeah, that's my part about peace.
Oh my God. I got goosebumps, yo. That's fucking beautiful. Shout out to Twitter and Twitter Spaces for creating this beautiful moment and for giving you healing and peace. I think peace is so lacking in so many people's lives. And for you to be able to not completely heal your inner child, because there's always next levels of healing. I don't think anyone is ever fully healed, but for you to be able to have that moment of clarity and just hug your childhood self and just be like, it's okay, you're safe. That is so fucking beautiful. Shout out to you, Cain. You out here just changing fucking lives and you don't even know it.
That's the first time I hear that story. We've told the story of how we came on Twitter. Match made in heaven when I bumped into him. We were doing a crypto event, NFT for beginners, and David was there and I noticed him from afar. I'm like, this guy, a Latino, right? A Latino recognized another Latino from afar. I'm like, this guy's here learning, asking questions. So when the whole session was done, I walked up to him. I'm like, hey, bro, like, I like the questions you were asking, but I noticed that we didn't fully answer them. Let's keep on talking. I pointed out that shirt, Mental Health Matters, Underdog Mentality. And I'm like, what's going on here? He's like, oh, yeah, mental health, blah, blah. And I'm like, bro, I'm having a Twitter space. My first Twitter space on mental health. It was anxiety, talking about that story that I just shared with you. I'm like, people need to hear this, right? I told you that story. Then and there, Stan, I'm like, people need to hear this story and people need to relate and use that in their own way. You need to download this app. You need to join me tomorrow. And sure enough, he, like he said, he texted me, he came on board, but I didn't know that was part of your path to your healing on your inner peace. I didn't know that. And what Tuco said, Tuco is a powerful dude too, man. He's had his own share of adversities in his life and he's shared that in Twitter spaces. I remember being on there. I remember the connection that you guys had. And I didn't know that conversation was part of what led to your peace in your life. And that's amazing. I love hearing that. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, bro. Thank you for relationships. I'm grateful for relationships right now and friendships right now. Super grateful for us. Yes, let's go.
Oh my God. My cheeks are going to fall off because I can't stop smiling. I feel the energy and I feel just the shit that is coming out from you guys. I think it's so fucking important for us to have these conversations. And that's what my podcast is all about. Like, yeah, we've gone through some shit. We've gone through the trenches. We've been at the bottom, but just know you don't have to fucking stay there. You have the power to change your life. And by having these type of conversations with regular people that are just living life day to day, it's really going to inspire and motivate people to be like, yo, if they fucking did it, I can do it too. You guys are fucking awesome. I knew this episode was going to be next level, but to be in it, it's like, all right, you doing something big.
For me, that story David just said right now, especially because it was personal and it touched the heart, man. That was meaningful, man.
Shout out to Twitter Spaces. Shout out
Yeah,
to
sure.
Twitter for this beautiful moment. So I want to stay on like the feel good vibe. So besides having these type of conversations, what are some other tools or resources that you guys have used in your own personal development journey that has helped you that you would be willing to share with my audience? David, I'm gonna start with you.
The Bible. God has been my number one, and recommend a course that I took too. But I think when I started realizing like this is dark, this can't be it, or you just want something more, and I was like, all right, let me try this higher power thing, and it started working. I started feeling being guided. And that really started changing. I was like, all right, I want more of this feeling. And I started working on my personal development. I took a course with Harvard Directors, but another course that impacted my life is Accelerated Success Formula with Dean Graziosi. It's more of a personal development course. I took it in 2021. So the Bible and Accelerated Success Formula, some tools that I recommend for your audience.
Jorge, what about you? What are some tools or resources that have helped you that you're willing to share?
Actually, it's probably in the same note as David. It's more about mentors. Finding a mentor. It's super important. I can only speak out of my experience. Again, I moved here when I was 14. My dad stayed in Mexico because he didn't have the visa, so he couldn't travel to see me, right? So it was just me and my mom. So I didn't have any males around me. So that's why whenever like I saw these two guys talking about all these entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, just starting their businesses, whatever, like I attached to all of them. So that made me realize the importance of mentorship, and something that David also says, like he felt guided. And that's really important. It's important to have a mentor. They're the best shortcut in life, literally. And also questioning yourself a lot. Have audits with yourself and ask yourself, okay, so all these ideas, concepts, dogmas that I have, are they actually serving me? Same with my ego, right? My ego helped me. It literally protected me for so long, but now it did its duty. I can take it from here. Now it can rest. I got it. Same thing with every single other concept, idea, or belief that you have. Analyze which one of those are truly yours and which one of them are actually serving you. And then if you think that something is not giving you peace or that it's like creating chaos in your life, then start to analyze, okay, why? And just try different things. That's important. We probably don't know what we want, but we know what we don't want. So the moment you identify that, that's better. Make sure you have those identified and then just try new things all the time and find mentors. Find people that are living the lifestyle that you want to live or the life that you want to live.
He is preaching. I'm telling you, the power of community has been so transformative in my own life, and finding like-minded people, whether it's a man or a woman who is on this journey of wanting more and actively working towards it, especially when it comes to social media, you have to really curate what it is that you're taking in every single day. My personal Instagram, I don't even fucking go on it anymore, because before my whole personal development journey, I would follow those gossip blogs and just a lot of bullshit. And my business Instagram and my TikTok, it's so motivational. I follow so many people on the same frequency and just wanting more and doing more. You need to surround yourself with those type of people if you really want to level up and change your life. And having these type of conversations with people like you, super transformative in my own personal life. And setting boundaries, like Cain talked about, putting those boundaries in. So let me hear from you. What are some tools and resources that have helped you in your own journey?
For me, meditation was a big one, and it was a hard one to get into. I use an app. It's guided meditation just because I'm a scatterbrain. I have ADHD, so my brain is constantly running at 100 miles per hour. So it's really hard to shut it off. But in the times that I do, and just like anything else, I fall off a routine and I don't meditate. But the times that I do meditate, that really helps a lot, and exercise. I find that I'm almost like a energetic dog that needs to release its energy. And I know that my energy is released while working out, going to the gym, not just lightweight, doing stuff like coming home dead tired, doing a quick 45-minute hit of working out intense. I've noticed that I just release so much energy within me. I haven't done that in a while and I need to get back to it. But those two things are key. I've been trying to go ahead and link in them. They say it's a good thing because obviously everything has to do with consistency, right? We brush our teeth in the morning, we brush our teeth at night, and we certain things that we do consistently. Get our coffee in the morning, right? So I heard that the best way to go ahead and add a new thing that you want to add to your life is just tag it on to something that you're already doing. So you're already brushing your teeth. See if you can add either before or after something that you need to do, whether it be a 5-minute read. Tag a 5-minute read before you brush your teeth or after you brush your teeth. So things like that. So meditating in the morning or a morning stretch for me has been key. I do take also some cold showers in the morning, and now it's just a matter of pride. Even though I don't want to, I talk myself out of it every single morning. I'm like, maybe I don't have to today. I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You do things you don't want to do. And I think that sets the mentality, that sets a tone for the rest of the day for me, is just doing that little cold shower, doing something I don't want to do. Nobody wants to work out. And if you, like Joe Rogan said, like if you work out only on the days you wanted to, nobody would. So I think same thing, that setting that tone, the morning showers, cold showers have been a constant routine for me, but I need to get back into that meditation and working out.
Well, listen, you're self-aware enough to know, and I'm sure you're going to do it. We're in a new year, and this is the time where people like to put their resolutions, which I think is bullshit, but that's another conversation for another day. But there's a quote, and I recently got back into my whole workout routine. I talked about it last season, but I had weight loss surgery. There's this quote that really stuck out to me, and I have it screenshot in my phone. It goes, "Motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is the only thing that guarantees your success." And when I saw that quote, I was like, oh my God, that's so fucking true. Because yeah, you're motivated as fuck in the beginning, and that's beautiful. I'm not taking away from motivation, but that's only going to last for so long. And it's up to you to have the discipline kick in, especially on those days when you don't want to do it. And I love, Cain, that you brought up, it's called habit stacking. There's a book, Atomic Habits, that talks about that. It's fucking life changing. And I really want to start reading more. That's another goal for me for 2023. But yeah, having those habits and just making it a part of your daily routine and doing it even when you don't want to, that is where the transformation and the change comes in. I'm going to start winding down the conversation. We're going to go with, what is your definition of thriving, since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast? Cain, I'm going to go with you first.
Thriving would be the ability to keep going. It sucks to fall, right? It sucks to fail, but just knowing that it's part of the process and get back up and going, that's thriving. There was a story I heard, it was a TED Talk that said that they would bring to the conversation on the kitchen table, they would bring up failures. So what have you failed at today? So making it normal to feel failure. And he talked about stories with their kids. They're like, well, today I failed at, everybody was doing the monkey bars and I tried doing the monkey bars and I fell and I couldn't do it. Like, good job. That means that you tried, right? So you have to look at failure as a part of the process, where sometimes we come in with the mentality of looking at failure as a negative. You have to look at it as a positive. And I think that is a beautiful thing to start embedding in children, is it's okay to fail. Like, what have you failed at today? Talk to me about it. That's amazing. Let's fail more often. I can't wait to hear the story of your failures tomorrow. So thriving, getting back up, and keep going.
I love that. And I love that you said normalizing that for the generation to come. It's a part of life. Everyone is going to fail. Everyone's going to have rejection. Everyone is going to feel sad and anger and all of those feelings. It's normal. But as long as you don't stay there, but you allow yourself to feel it in that moment, and then you can move on.
And some pep talks. Pep talks to me, I guess, sometimes works too, because I just started a new job and I'm in sales, right? So I knew that there was going to be a learning curve. And I knew, I'm like, okay, I'm going to fail, but that's going to be okay. Just hurry up, fail fast. I've heard that many times before. Just fail fast, hurry up and keep going. If there's any other time to fail, it's when you start. And that's what I told myself. Who cares what people think? Like, if any time there is to fail, it is now. I'm just starting. So don't beat myself up for failing. And I'm in the perfect spot to fail. And it's now. Like, taking that in and owning it really just put me at a better position. Like, it had me coming in ready to fail. Like, I'm ready. Let's see how much more I gain out of these failures. And that, for me, like I told you about my babies, having that conversation, putting in perspective a different way, a twist, really helped me overcome a lot of things like that.
For sure. It comes with that growth mindset, right? All right, David, what about you? What is your definition of thriving?
Cain touched on it pretty good. That perspective of getting back up and willing to fail, right? Getting to a state where we just become like unstoppable. Whatever obstacle comes at us, we're just persevering no matter what. It's just a constant battle headed towards victory, and we're running towards it. We're hitting the ground. Let's hit the ground. Let's hit the ground and let's go for it. So that's my perspective on thriving.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Like I said before, there's a message in the mess, and you're going to see it on the other side once you get through whatever hardship that you're going through. And just being able to not quit, even on the days where you want to just fucking give them, say, this is too hard, this is too much, I can't. No, because it's going to be fucking worth it. Just keep going. So I really hope whoever is listening, you're not only hearing it from me because I preach it all the fucking time on my podcast. There's validation from other people that you got this. Just keep going. What about you, Jorge?
To me, it's literally just part of the process. We all go through it. We all face a situation where we have to just keep thriving, right? And it's just a reminder that it's part of the process. We all go through it. And if we are intentional, then it becomes a lot easier because now you know that because everything is part of a process and you have an intent, a purpose, which is something that we didn't touch on, right? We lack purpose at times, right? Everybody pretty much does. When you have a purpose, when you're intentional, thriving is just part of the process. Just have to keep on going. We all have to keep thriving.
All right, 2 more questions before we wrap up. If you could go back to your childhood self, being the man that you are today, what is one piece of advice you would tell him?
I will tell myself to just believe in yourself. It's going to be fine. It's gonna work out. Whatever problems you have to go through them to become who you're gonna end up becoming, right? Don't worry. Don't stress about what's gonna happen. Follow your path. Whatever happens, it will happen. It was meant to happen.
It's funny, we just had a Twitter space where we revisited our inner child. And I'm going to say the same thing that I told myself then, which is all of these emotions that you're feeling, they are normal. All this anger and all this resentment and all these things that you're feeling, they're normal. You just got to learn how to control them. Don't let the emotion control you. You control that emotion, and being aware is the number one thing. And I'm doing it now with my daughters. I see that and I'm basically talking to them like if it was me talking to myself as a young kid. And that was a huge thing. Is my emotions were a big part of a lot of decisions, a lot of bad decisions, a lot of negative things that I did in my life, that if I can go back and have that maturity of that understanding of my emotions, it would have been a different road. I mean, I'm thankful for the road I'm at now because I'm on your podcast preaching what we should be doing. And I know there's a lot of other people that are out there feeling the same thing we were feeling. We're not alone. And the Twitter spaces that we have are attest to that. So it's basically controlling those emotions.
I would tell him, don't run away. Because I had this sense when I was growing up, I kept saying, oh, I'm going to run away. But I never did until I was like 16, 17, right? That's a different story. I would run away from a lot of my problems too, run away from confrontations. And I'll just tell him to don't run away, face it, be strong. And like Cain said, it's normal to feel. It's normal to embrace the emotions that are around you. And it's not the end.
And I think that's a narrative that a lot of men need to hear, even grown-ass men. Feel your emotions. It's normal. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be vulnerable. And I think hearing from the 3 of you during tonight's conversation is really going to help a lot of people to normalize having these type of conversations around feelings and mental health and all of those things. So I just want to thank y'all so much for really showing up and being vulnerable and honest and just creating change. I think it's really important for us to continue having these type of conversations, not just for men, not just for women, but just for a community as a whole. There's so many people out there struggling, suffering in silence. We saw it with Twitch when he passed away. And I think in order for us to create change, we need to normalize these type of conversations. So shout out to y'all for doing the damn thing.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for having us and thank you for these conversations because it's important that we talk about this. I have a question. I would love to hear everyone's opinion about this, especially you as a woman. I love your personality and I love the way you think. So I would love to hear your opinion about this. Why do you think messages like the one from Andrew Tate resonate so much in young men? He talks about men having lack of purpose, men having to be the provider, men having to basically men up, being this, not toxic, but like the most stereotypical type of traits that a man's supposed to be.
He is a very vocal person that presses a lot of buttons. There's some truth to what he's saying. I think that he's the role model that young kids want to have now, like just someone that's fit and has, flashy cars and a big house.
You talk about Andrew Tate, the guy who got arrested?
That one. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He's a fucking douchebag, and I'm glad he's arrested. That's how I feel. You said his name, but I'm so bad with names. I just know faces, and I saw that he got arrested in Russia for, I think, human trafficking or whatever the fuck. He's a fucking douchebag. In my opinion, as a woman, he's a fucking misogynist. He is a fucking douchebag, and karma is finally coming around to set his ass on fire. So that's my 2 cents, but yeah, I could continue.
As soon as she saw the face, you're like, oh, that motherfucker.
Andrew Tate, it sounds familiar, but like, oh, this piece of shit? Okay, but go ahead.
So I've heard a couple of his speeches, and I remember my brothers pointing him out to me at first. And yeah, I didn't like him either. I didn't like the way he communicated his message. Not until after I read between the lines, and I know a lot of his stuff was kind of to poke the bear, to get the attention almost. The message was there. There was some message that I agreed and some that I don't. But I see why young men looked up to them, because he was that role model that they probably weren't getting at home. A role model that helped them escape that home vibe that they had, like for myself or like David, right? Growing up, if you had somebody that was in social media that was guiding you, saying, hey man, you got to work hard, you got to do this. Obviously, there's a lot of the stuff that goes negatively on what he says and how he says it, and I get that. But underlying message was, dude, man up, go out there, get a job, provide, do this, do that. And I think a lot of vulnerable men out there look at someone like that and automatically are attracted to that. Not just be, like I said, he had the cars, right? He had that body, that persona. And I think that's what a lot of people liked about him. I personally liked his message, just not the way he delivered it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The delivery is not attractive.
Yeah.
I was just curious to see like what you thought about it, because it's just, to me, it's fascinating to see how so many men gravitate towards that type of message, right? And analyzing and what we have spoken on the Twitter spaces, it's more and more evident to me that the majority of men lack purpose. And when someone like that comes along, and if a kid or a guy doesn't have a role model, or the role models that are around him are not cultivating enough or emotionally aware, it's easy to gravitate towards these type of messages, right? And it's scary in a way. That shows you the amount of men who really lack that guidance.
And it reminds me of another internet personality, Kevin Samuels, who passed away last year. He actually passed away, and he was very controversial in the way that he would have those type of conversations as well. And a lot of people fucking hated him, and a lot of people unfortunately celebrated his death because they hated him so much. But when I listened to a couple of his lives, some of the shit that he was saying, and me being a woman, it was like, it's kind of fucking true. But I think this society, this day and age, when people tell you about yourself and call you out on your shit and you're not ready to receive that, you automatically go into defense mode and blame everyone else. And I think that's way too normal in today's society. Of sometimes you need to be called out on your shit. Like I said before, sometimes you need to look in the mirror and take accountability and be like, I'm the fucking problem. Like that Taylor Swift song, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. That's when I really started to change my life, when I looked in the mirror and took accountability. But I feel like, me personally, this is my opinion and it might be unpopular, but this generation is fucking soft. They're fucking soft, and they're way too fucking sensitive, and they're so quick to this cancel culture, and if it's not what I think, then you're fucking wrong. No, let's be open to having different conversations and different viewpoints and different opinions, and being able to communicate in a healthy way. Yeah, maybe sometimes the delivery may be off, but sometimes there's truth behind what people are saying. So that's my 2 cents. But still, fuck Andrew Tate. Okay, he's a douchebag. I don't like him.
That's fair. Yeah, his method of communication, it was just off. And he does it because he knows what he's doing, right? He does it just to make people angry, and it worked for him. So in a year, he went from being a nobody to be the most Googled man on earth. And that shows you the power of making people angry. That's a huge indicator of how anger, it's powerful. And if you make people angry, like if you poke them enough times, they will talk about you, they will dream with you, they will think about you. And that's something that we also have to start doing, right? To start to incentivize different type of feelings, not just anger.
David, you got anything to say before we wrap this up?
Honestly, I haven't really done my research with Andrew Tate. I'm being honest and truth. I see him on Instagram. I see the little things, right? But I haven't really done my full research. I haven't listened to his videos on YouTube or anything like that. However, I am grateful for the session with you guys, 100%. Thank you guys, truly.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, please let my audience know, how can they follow you? If you guys have any offerings or anything that you want to share with my audience that we can connect with you more, because I know people are going to be like, yo, these 3 are fucking amazing and I want to know more about them. So Jorge, start with you. How can we follow you?
Of course, you can find me on Twitter. It's Jorge Beron. Or you can go to my website. It's jorgeperez.co. I have all my links there, so I guess that will be the easiest and quickest way. But yeah, like I said, I'm focusing right now on empowering Latinos in the Web3 space. So we're doing 5 Twitter spaces per week.
That's a lot. You're not tired?
It's a little tiring, right? But we are serious about what we want to do. And this is the perfect opportunity for people to jump into the space and be educated, because this is the only opportunity that we truly have to create generational wealth. And I'm not talking about you're going to get rich overnight. That's not going to happen. Whoever tells you that, they're lying to you. But if you educate yourself and you are in the right place at the right time, a lot of good things can happen.
I love it. I will leave your information in the episode show notes. Thank you so much for sharing that. David, how can we follow you? What are you working on?
On Instagram, you guys can follow me, Del_Campo_David. Right now, we're working on Underdog Brand, right? Bringing more awareness to mental health within our community, doing events. We're planning out more events throughout the year. So it's just mainly focusing on edifying mental health right now. Twitter Spaces with Cain on Thursday nights. So that's pretty much on my end right now.
Yes, I love those Twitter spaces. I'm so sad I missed the last couple. We're 3 hours apart, but I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for continuing to have these powerful conversations for mental health and men and Latinos and communities of color. We need so much more people like you showing up. So thank you. Cain, what about you? How can we follow you?
With myself, it's Cainster for you, and that's the number 4 and the letter U. And that's either on Twitter or on Instagram. And the one thing that I'm very consistent on right now is just bringing mental health awareness with David on Thursday nights. That's at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then we also do a Tuesday, which is Martes de Salud Mental, which is we do it the same exact thing, right? Mental health awareness, but we do it in Spanish. And that's where my biggest driver and passion is noticing it, especially because our parents, I noticed that you guys say that you guys are making that generational change, bringing awareness to my mom and my dad, their little anxiety and anger that they had bottled up, and kind of bringing it to their attention. That was a huge thing for me, and the ability to connect with the Latin community, with the Spanish speaking community on Tuesdays, Martes de Salud Mental. We do that. It varies between the other 2 co-hosts that we have, which is Patty, La Dama.
Shout out to Patty. Yo, I love her. She's amazing.
For sure. Yeah, she's powerhouse lady. And then we have Diego, Mexico en Imágenes. He's out there in Ciudad de Mexico. So the 3 of us co-host that on Tuesdays. So check us out on Twitter, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mental health, whether it be in English or Spanish.
And I love that you're doing it in Spanish. I feel like our community has always lacked so much when it comes to resources for the mental health. So for you guys to consistently be showing up and doing that, y'all are creating such change. And Jorge, you in the Web3 space, and for you to be creating your own table and bringing people along with you, it's so fucking powerful. Once again, before I wrap up this conversation, I just want to say thank you so much for the 3 of you to agreeing to come on, to having this conversation. It has been so healing and therapeutic for me, and I know it's going to help so many people who listen to it. So I just want to say thank you. Keep showing up, keep doing what you're doing, and I wish you 3 nothing but abundance and prosperity and wealth and good vibes for 2023 and beyond. Okay, we out here killing shit, and I'm just so honored to have the 3 of you in my permanent circle. Y'all are stuck with me for life. Okay, and I'm gonna need for y'all to come to the East Coast one day, and we can all meet up in New York and just have an amazing time. But thank you so much for doing this from the bottom of my heart. It really, really just warms my heart and soul. So thank you.
For sure, yeah. We will meet in real life. I know we will. I know David we have, but Jorge and Leanne, it has to happen. So New York 2023, I think we've already manifested that out there.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
We will for sure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the session. Super grateful. Thank you for Jorge dropping gems, Cain for sharing your perspective, Leanne for inviting us to come on to this podcast with your show. It's such an honor. I'm super grateful for you guys.
It's the first of many collaborations. I can guarantee that.
Y'all popped my podcast cherry, and I was happy to do it here with y'all. So let's go.
Thank you, guys.